Welcome to Not Entirely Unlike Tea with Christine Collins. Hey there, it's Christine Collins, and I have for you today something that we talk about really often, but don't necessarily understand, and that is procrastination, or so-called procrastination, because today I'm going to give you what is actually going on when you find that happening, and what you can do about it. And we can define that as we have something that we want to be doing, whether it's a business task or something personal, or even sometimes when the goal is to do something like relax or eat or shower, and we're still finding ourselves pushing it off and not moving into that next step. So the first thing that's really helpful is to have an awareness of it happening and noticing it as early as possible. When I have this experience, and maybe you can relate, a lot of times I maybe start scrolling on social media or something like that, and I don't actually notice what's going on until like several minutes in. And this can happen with almost anything. We might decide to just quickly tidy up a certain area, and all of a sudden 30 minutes have gone by. So once you become aware of, oh, hey, I didn't really intend to be doing this right now. I meant to be doing something different. Having that awareness is huge. Once you have it, you can then kind of examine briefly with these certain questions. The first thing that's worth asking yourself when you notice it happening is, do I actually need a break and didn't notice? This tends to happen to me when I've been working on something kind of intently for a period of time, and a few minutes later, I suddenly realize that I've started checking email or doing something on social media or going through something that wasn't the plan. And sometimes when this happens, it's actually your brain checking out on your behalf. The thing is that our brains are beautiful, gorgeous things, but it does need a break here and there. And this is tied to cognitive fatigue in the brain's energy management system, or prefrontal cortex, which is responsible for executive functions like planning and control. When that gets depleted, the brain automatically shifts into the default mode network. And this is not laziness or procrastination. It is a biological necessity for neural recovery, for consolidation of learning and tasks, and replenishing our neurotransmitters. So what will happen is that when the brain needs the break, it will go ahead and take that break with or without your permission. So that's the first thing to check in with yourself about. If you notice procrastination happening, you might just ask yourself, was I doing something where I just hit a stuck point or hit a point where I just needed a break? And so now I'm unintentionally doing something else, because what I actually need to do is just sit down for a few minutes and relax, or read a book, or whatever that looks like for you. Now, this same mechanism can kind of kick in also when we are emotionally overwhelmed. So that leads us into the second question that it's worth asking yourself. Sometimes we've set ourselves to do a task or to begin working on something, and actually there's something kind of big in the background, something emotional that perhaps we haven't had the chance yet to process. And when we are just sort of carrying this thing around that hasn't yet been touched and resolved in some way, it can sometimes be a distraction, and we aren't even necessarily consciously aware of that. We may think that we're diving into something and we just can't seem to focus. We can't seem to stay connected to the topic. Our mind keeps straying off to that heavy emotional topic that we haven't processed. And this is connecting to the interaction between the amygdala, which is our emotional center, and the prefrontal cortex. So when we're emotionally overwhelmed, our amygdala becomes hyperactive, triggering that flight, fight, freeze response. And that suppresses some of our prefrontal cortex function with stress hormones like cortisol. And so the brain is prioritizing that emotional processing over task completion as a survival mechanism. So in this situation, situation, the procrastination is serving as an unconscious emotional regulation strategy. And one of the reasons why this happens is because when we do something like scroll on social media or get engaged in a conversation, but that wasn't necessarily what we were intending on doing right now, it gives us a little hit of dopamine or oxytocin, which are those feel-good chemicals. And so it's completely understandable that this kind of thing would happen where we're feeling a little bit down, we're a little bit emotionally off or upset, and consequently, we kind of are getting led off into some activities that will restore us in some way or make us feel a little bit better or kind of take the edge off of whatever that emotional thing is. So it's totally normal and acceptable that this is happening. And having, again, that awareness will allow you to get back in the seat of control again and check in with yourself about how you're feeling, noticing like, oh, hey, I'm actually just dopamine scrolling, looking for, a quick little hit for myself to feel just that little bit better from whatever is upsetting you. So sometimes the question is, am I actually just really upset right now? And that's what's going on here for me. So then once you're aware of it, then you can make a decision about what you want to do with that next. Perhaps you have some wonderful mindset processing tools, some EFT or something like that, and you can do something to make yourself better intentionally without getting yanked all over the place just to get those dopamine and oxytocin hits. Another reason procrastination can take hold is when we don't actually know what to do next. So this happens to me sometimes when I'm in the middle of a project and I hit a place where I'm stuck in some way or another. Perhaps it's like the tech isn't lining up for me, or there's something I can't figure out, or I don't have the appropriate content prepared ahead of time and I actually need to do that next. It can also happen when we don't have any kind of a plan and we're just going into the day and sitting down to do something, but it's not crystal clear to us ahead of time what that's going to be. And here the nucleus accumbens and the dopamine system need a clear reward pathway to motivate our action. And that uncertainty activates the anterior cingulate cortex, which creates kind of like an error signal that can feel very uncomfortable without having those clear next steps. We don't have the dopaminergic momentum that we need in order to initiate our next action. And that can actually lead us to task avoidance. We also tend to undervalue future rewards in comparison to more immediate rewards that we might get from social media scrolling or something similar. And that is just a bit of evolutionary programming that favored some more immediate survival needs over long-term planning. Now, of course, we can hack this a little bit when we break our tasks down into smaller steps that get us some small dopamine releases, and our reward system will respond better to a lot of small wins over a big one. But it's helpful just to understand some of the biology that's happening underneath the surface when we're having these experiences. And indecision can really lead to a lot of delays in moving forward with your tasks and goals, which is one reason why I will sometimes create a lot of routine that is just repeatable day to day, like the same lunch every day. I actually wear the same outfit most days. And it allows you to remove some of the decision fatigue so that you can focus your energy and that creativity around, okay, what do I actually need to accomplish today? What do I need to do next? How do I solve this problem? And if you hit a point where you are stuck, you don't know what to do next, sometimes that's a great time to go ahead and take a little break, give your mind a rest, and often your brain will kind of continue to try to solve that problem for you in the background while you're off, having that cup of tea, taking that little walk. Your brain is still working on it for you in the background. And if you use tools like hypnosis, yoga nidra, you can take that little 15 or 20 minutes to just rest your mind and actually allow that creativity in you to kind of come forward and help you to problem solve, perhaps give you the next step, perhaps show you what the next piece is in your project or what you need to work on next. And a lot of times we have projects written down to do, but we haven't actually broken it down small enough. And so when we see that item on our task list, it's kind of overwhelming and it's like, ooh, where do I even start with this? Because it hasn't been broken down in clear, small steps. And the smaller the steps, the better in terms of getting started. And by asking yourself these little questions when you notice procrastination creeping up, you'll actually get to know yourself quite a bit better and very quickly, and you'll gain an insight into how you tend to move when you're in these different situations. When you are feeling like you need a break, when you're tired, when you are feeling indecisive or unsure of where to go forward from, when you are feeling emotionally upset and distracted. You'll get that beautiful insight into, oh, that's interesting. This is how my brain does things. Okay, I see where we're going here. And learn yourself, because no one can actually tell you exactly how your unique mind works in some of these situations. It is a little bit of just observation, trial and error, until you figure out what some of your own distractions are. And the number one thing that I want to leave you with here is to not beat up on yourself or to be too judgy of yourself. Understand that this is completely normal. It's a human condition. There's a reason why there are tons of people out there that talk about this word, procrastination, because from a productivity standpoint, it's quite normal. There would not be billions of courses and tips and suggestions around this issue if the majority of people did not already struggle with it. So please know that it's not you, it's just the way we're wired. And getting to know yourself and understand what happens for you in those moments when you perhaps run off seeking a little bit of dopamine or something that feels good to you, or when you accidentally take that break because your brain actually really needed that break right now. Allow yourself to be exactly the way that you are, and instead of beating up on yourself and feeling crappy about it, become the observer. Just notice what's happening for me. When do I tend to notice it happening? Get really curious instead of frustrated and angry at yourself, understanding that it's normal, it happens to everyone, and the better you pay attention to yourself and get to know yourself, the easier it's going to be for you to manage this as you go forward. And in so doing, I promise you will become more productive and probably feel better as well. And if you are looking for some mindset support tools to help you with regulating emotions, managing productivity, managing overwhelm and stress, I highly recommend things like EFT tapping, hypnosis, yoga nidra, and there are many others, but these three are all available in my mindset membership, which you can check out further in the show notes. And until we connect the next time, I wish you a most magical and creative rest of your day. Thanks for listening. This is Christine Collins at transformcreate.com.